Hey, this is Pat.
Pat, Steve Gaspar from the Hollywood AllStars calling. How are you?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
Good, and I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no. Man, I listening to that track, The River Boy. Holy crap. Boy, did that
Pat, you know what's funny? I mean, you started off on a great note. My favorite song on the project, and it's funny because it's probably maybe the least likely, the least obvious choice, perhaps, is the best way to say it. But I agree with you. I mean, that's the one that is probably my favorite song, too. I'm surprised that's the one you gravitated toward.
Well, I've had this black cloud that's been following me since, I don't know, May. I guess the older we get, Steve, the more friends, unfortunately, that have passed on. And
yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Pat.
The minute I played that, I got choked up and goosebumps, and we'll chat about that in a minute. I mean, that song, I just picture myself walking out of the church at the end of a funeral. Yeah. You know, the river keeps going, and it's just a beautiful song. I mean, not to say that the others aren't, boy, but it related to me really quick. But do you have anybody? Did Chip have another interview set, just so I know time-wise, Steve?
No, I'm all yours, Pat. I'm fine. So as long as you want to take, I'm with you.
Okay, cool. I normally go like 20 minutes or so because people, if our conversation's going good, I'm going to keep on going. But, today people, they want to hear what's going on, what's new and exciting, and what the whole interview's about. And we got a lot to talk about. You got a dynamic all-star group, boy. I'm excited for you, so this is all good.
Excellent. Great.
All right, let me get you started here. I'll just count down and go from there, Steve.
Sounds great, Pat. Thank you.
3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome to Pat's Soundbites Unplugged podcast. Keeping new music alive on the radio at WBXO and on video and on Zoom. And man, remember this name, the Hollywood AllStars. That's right, I'll say it again, the Hollywood AllStars. And when you hear that word AllStars, let me tell you, this is a dynamic supergroup featuring members of Tower of Power, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Edgar Winter, the Blues Brothers, and much more. And their debut EP comes out this Friday, August 26th, through Deco Entertainment. And it's a pleasure to have on our rock and roll phone today. Well, he's a Grammy-nominated songwriter, producer, keyboardist, and he's a founding member of this crazy Hollywood all-star band, and I'm talking Mr. Steve Gaspar. How are you, Steve?
Pat, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. Pleasure is all mine for sure. I can't wait to speak with you about this.
My goodness, what a project. What a selection of a multitude of world-class musicians. I love the tracks. Gonna throw a bunch on our rotation, I can tell you that. Before we get started, Steve, I always like to find out, where and how did you find your love for music? Mom and Dad, the Beatles, Ed Sullivan, a combination of all? How did you say, hey, I want to do that, get involved in music?
Well, Pat, you know what? To answer your question, you hit everything on the head, kind of all of the above. My dad was a classical musician. Trombone was his instrument, and he had played in many different symphony orchestras, from the Chicago Symphony, the Dallas Symphony in Texas, and before settling on the East Coast, and then when he eventually did, had played with the New Haven Symphony Orchestra in Connecticut, the Bridgeport Symphony, and was really a big lover of music. And he instilled that in me at a very young age. As a matter of fact, at 4.5 years old, I was told I'm going to take piano lessons. And it's funny, Pat. At that age, who knows? You don't even argue. You just do what you're told, more or less. And that was my introduction into music, piano lessons at 4.5 years old. It was all classical in the beginning because, as I said, that was my dad's favorite genre. But like you mentioned, also the Beatles appear on Ed Sullivan, and like probably many musicians that you talk to, it was a life-changing experience for me, for sure.
Did you play in school as well, Steve?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't in bands per se because I was always a keyboard player, but I did appear in all the choirs in school. I usually was in the chorus. I did, once I got to high school, ended up accompanying different choral groups playing piano. But by then, I had already got, the rock and roll bug had already bitten, and it was something that infected me and has lasted with me for the rest of my life.
My goodness, you got that right. The Ed Sullivan, it seems like everybody I talked to, oh my God, I watched the Ed Sullivan. I said, yep, I definitely want to be like those guys. And you mentioned classical piano. I mean, look, the foundation that built for you, Steve. I mean, can it be any better? Because that can just expand you into rock and funk and jazz and soul and all of that. So when people hear, well, classical, they got to really open up their mind to think about the big picture here, that if you can do classical, you could pretty much do anything. Am I correct with that?
Oh, absolutely, Pat. And further, when you get into songwriting and arranging and production, that background has served me very well. I am not at all in the least bit sorry that's how, I bit my teeth on classical music at a very young age. And as I said, it served me very well. The theory knowledge, when it comes to arranging, especially now that I'm working with a 13-piece band with a horn section, it can be tricky producing a record like this and still have everyone shine. But I think the reason we were successful doing that, probably a lot of it does stem from that background, for sure.
No doubt about it. Okay, now let's get into the Hollywood AllStars 13-piece and horn section. Let's not just say the iconic horn section of the Uptown Horns. Obviously, you networked throughout the year, Steve, to know the folks that you have here from all these great bands and artists. My goodness.
Oh, for sure, Pat. And it's funny. A lot of us had crossed paths either in recording studios or doing short tours or gigs with one another throughout the years. But there's no doubt I called in a lot of favors when I got the idea to start this. I call it my traveling circus. When you think about the business today, Pat, how everything is being trimmed back and cut down, the idea of coming out with a 13-piece band almost seems incomprehensible to people. They look at me like, are you nuts? But when I got this collection of artists together and presented this idea to everyone, it really was very, surprising in a very heartwarming way how on board with the idea everyone was. It was very gratifying.
Well, I see that in today's world, Steve, with the whole COVID thing, more of a trend. Maybe not 13-piece, but there's a lot of great rock, whoever that are in, say like Def Leppard, Phil Collen, and Vivian Campbell. Everybody has like a side project because, and not to say it gets complacent of playing Pour Some Sugar on Me, but after a while, for 40 years, I guess, but it is your meat and potatoes. But it's great to also lean into doing something different and jamming and working with other folks that you probably never had the opportunity to do because of your bread and butter, band that you're hooked up with. So I think this has got to be a great opportunity for all the folks that you have recruited to jam with you. When I hear horns and I hear organ, I'm on my feet, high energy, high octane, and I know the folks Friday night at the Sacred Heart Community Theater in downtown Fairfield, Connecticut, are not going to be able to sit in their seats for a very short time when you guys take the stage. I can say that.
Well, we do love, I'll tell you, Pat, we do love to see the audience up in the aisles, no question. And, to your point, yes, it began as a passion project of mine. It was almost something in the beginning that I didn't even know if I was going to be able to pull this off or not. And would it be able to work? I mean, for the space reasons alone, where do you put a 13-piece band?
Yeah, exactly.
Pat, right off the bat, it became a small theater band because there were no clubs that we could even fit this thing in. But no doubt, it's a passion project. And, with all the other things that we all do to survive in the music business, to have one thing that becomes your little baby, your little idea. It was the seed of this that was planted in my head. And I just followed through with it and said, hopefully, this is going to work. And never dreamed 5 years ago that I would be sitting here speaking with you, telling you that, we've assembled the horn section from the Rolling Stones Steel Wheels tour. As you mentioned, the bass player who's worked with Johnny and Edgar Winter, the lead singer from Tower of Power, a guitar player who's worked with Talking Heads and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I mean, the list just goes on. And I have to pinch myself sometimes to believe this actually even happened.
Yeah, that is a home run and a half. I know Scott Spray from Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter.
Wonderful guy.
I know Scott from playing with Paul Nelson around Connecticut here and there. And then you also got the one and only tremendous guy Will Lee that everybody loves and loves to get on their record if he's got time to do that. But a well organized, I mean, like you said, 13 people. We got to get you to Daryl's house over here. I just don't know where we'll fit you, but it would be great to have you in Daryl Hall's club over here in Pauling, New York. Steve, talk to me about Field of Grace, a 5-track EP, and if I get it right, 3 originals, and then we'll talk about, obviously, Living in America. But talk to me about again, another trend of, instead of putting out a killer album and spending a lot more time, I think you see more and more of a single, a video, an introduction of who we are, and get a feel for the feedback of what folks are thinking. Is that the direction that you were taking or thinking?
You're exactly right, Pat. It's funny. This band started off as really a glorified cover band. And when we first got together several years ago, what we ended up doing to, put our set together, we decided to pull songs from a lot of the different people that the artists in the band have played with. And we figured, well, you've worked with the Rolling Stones, we'll do a Rolling Stones song. You played with Edgar Winter, we'll do an Edgar Winter song. But we put our own spin on them, and we sort of made them our own. And the band was fairly successful doing, 250 to 500 seat theaters in Connecticut for a while. And then the pandemic hits. Everybody's trapped home. And I sat there and I thought to myself, I've got this incredible palette of colors with this band. And if it's ever going to get to the next level, I really have to be realistic and realize I've got to write for this band. The whole thing that's going to take it out of being a glorified cover band is original material. And the pandemic gave me the opportunity and the time, as it did so many musicians, to sit down at the piano and decide, all right, what am I going to do for this band? What is the direction? What are the songs going to be like? And as you mentioned, 3 of them are my originals. There is one song that the Uptown Horns wrote for the project. That's the track Trust Me. And then through all of this happening, go figure, the songwriter Charlie Midnight, who, if you know the name, has written and produced for Joe Cocker, Barbara Streisand, Andrea Bocelli, just a world-class guy, happens to become a fan of the band. And through conversations, we decide that if there was ever a band that could do a cover of a James Brown song, this is the band. And that's how the whole seed was planted for the Living in America remake.
My goodness, and you guys, you hit it out of the park again. Steve, talk about your songwriting process. You mentioned you get behind the piano. Is it a riff? Is it an idea? We'll talk about my favorite song, The River, in a second. How does it all begin for you?
You know what, Pat? It can happen in a lot of different ways. More more often than not, for me personally, and I mean, if you interview 10 songwriters, you'll get 10 different ways people work. For me, if I call it noodling. I just let my fingers drift across the keys. And again, going back to that classical background, I know I'm not going to play anything that sounds bad, but I don't know that I'll play anything that's brilliant. So I noodle around on the keys, and I wait for something to just fall out of my fingers that my ears go, wow, that was cool. That strikes me. What is that? And you could assemble pieces of songs that way. On other occasions, there have been, and they're more rare for me, I'll get a lyric idea or an idea for a lyric hook, or an idea that says to me, this is really what the whole song is about. And, like I said, it happens different ways for me, but more often than not, the music comes first for me.
I'm a lyric guy, Steve. I like to just put the headset on, close my eyes, and try to understand maybe what you were thinking. But obviously, it's under the interpretation of everybody. Everybody might say,
and you know what, Pat? It took me many years, and I agree with you 100%. It took me many years to learn that very valuable lesson when it comes to songwriting. The words are everything. That's what people really want to hear and talk about. Melodies are beautiful. Hooks are beautiful. Chord changes are beautiful, but it's really, especially when you're pitching songs to other artists, they want to know what they're singing about and what they're saying. So I agree with you about the lyrics for sure.
Yeah, and your vocalist has to understand where you're coming from, because as the vocalist they have to show the emotion and sell it to the audience. But it's always been about the words. I can sing it back and I could understand. Maybe it's not the exact story that I was thinking of, but I pretty much like, and I'll talk about now, The River. Oh my goodness, boy, did it relevant, it just like I got goosebumps and kind of choked me up. And I said, well, Steve was certainly thinking of maybe of folks that have passed on, and it's just a beautiful song, and probably no disrespect to the other four or to James Brown, Living in America, but The River, maybe that should be the number 2 single, Steve. I don't know.
You know what, Pat? I have to tell you that I couldn't be more pleased, and that's probably one of the most gratifying things anyone has said to me, simply because it is the ballad on the project, and those songs tend to get overlooked sometimes, but you got it 100% where it came from, what I was feeling when I wrote it. And I was sitting here, as I mentioned, during the pandemic, thinking of people that we've lost, and we've all lost people, not only to the pandemic, but even up to present day. You turn on the news and you go, oh my gosh, somebody else that you know and loved perhaps has passed. And that song was a very peculiar song in that it just fell out of me. Lyrically, melodically, I had the intention of writing like sort of a gospel-tinged kind of song, because I figured if we're going to do a ballad with this band, it's got to have a little bit of soulfulness to it. It can't be a bubblegummy kind of ballad.
Right.
But that song, it just happened. And Pat, when you think of the words, and we're all going across the river, we're all going around the bend, you got to do what makes you shiver before your time comes to an end. Tells people we're all here for a very short time, and you better grab the brass ring, man. You better go for the gusto. Do what makes you shiver. Do in your life what really is in your heart, before our time passes.
As I said to you earlier, I've lost probably 5 or 6 good folks over the last couple of months. And in one of the conversations I had with a few of my friends, somebody said, we only got one life and you got to make it work and make the best out of it. And my other buddy goes, wait a minute, now you got it wrong. And we're looking at him. He goes, there's only one death. You have all the life in the world, and that's why you got to make it work. And
right.
I'm like, wow, where did you come up with that one? But he is absolutely right. We always say, well, we only got one life. No. We live every day. We're blessed to have a pulse every day, and we have to make the best of it. But once death comes, that's the end of it. So
that's exactly right, Pat.
How did you do the recording process with this, Steve, with the whole COVID? Was there a lot of files back and forth? Obviously, it's going to be so much of a challenge of getting everybody into a studio together.
Well, it's funny. Most of the bulk of the writing was done during the heart of the pandemic, when it was really at its worst, and people didn't want to go out. people were coming home with their grocery bags and washing the grocery bags before they bring them into the house, and you didn't dare go anywhere without a mask. Fortunately, it was toward the end where the songs were finished and we decided we were going to go in and actually start the recording. By that point, I was able to do all the rhythm tracks, keyboards, guitar, bass, drums, percussion. We all assembled together in the studio. We recorded, I don't know if you're familiar with the Carriage House in Stamford, Connecticut,
Absolutely.
but Johnny Montanese there, I got to tell you, what a wonderful guy. I mean, he really gave us a home there. He made us feel at home and continues to this day to be a big fan of the band, and we love Johnny in the studio. So we did a lot of the tracks there together. But, you know, when it came to the horn section, a couple of the horn players, you know, had suffered pneumonia a couple of years prior, and were advised that they better be very, very careful before, you know, let the smoke clear. The horns were all done remotely, and which was tricky in itself, because here are these songs with no horns on them, and these guys, they're truly amazing. I mean, did horn arrangements, and we conferred back and forth. Do you like this part? Do you like that part? And that's pretty much how the project went. Well, 4 of the songs were done that way. Then, of course, Living in America comes, and that became sort of the cornerstone for us, just in terms of the quality of that song. I mean, here's a song that's already a proven song that's already been a Grammy-winning song that's a surefire hit, and it can be very tricky, especially with a James Brown cover. You know, I mean, that's something you got to be very, very careful with, to pay respect to the original, but at the same time, we wanted to give it some of our flavor. And I guess, you know, the biggest compliment for me was when I sent the track to Charlie Midnight, the writer. You know, Charlie sent me a note and said, I couldn't be more pleased with this. It sounds amazing. You gave enough of a tip of the hat to the original, but you did make it your own, and it's just amazing. So that's gratifying as well, to have the songwriter be able to say that to you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you certainly don't want to take away from that classic of a song, but you have to add your ingredient to it to make it a little bit yours. So
exactly, Pat. Otherwise, you're right. It does become just a cover band, and
right?
We didn't want it to be that. And you know, when you think about what's going on in America today, I think the message of that song is almost more pertinent now than it was in '85. I mean,
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, boy, if that isn't relevant now, think about it.
Sure.
Yeah, think about where we're at today, how the importance of living in America and the freedom that we're blessed to have each and every day. When I think about the poor folks over in Ukraine, that's mind-boggling to me, and I don't want to get into anything with politics, but I like the flow of the track, Steve. Obviously, you threw The River in there, which is, again, my favorite track. It's funny, you know, a lot of folks that I've been blessed to interview, you know, when COVID came out, I was like, new music. And I go, no, this is the time to do it because everybody's home. And then when you go, hopefully we get back on the road, which is happening now, is that when you say, you don't have to say, hey, this is a new track, you know, song number 3 from our new EP or album, when everybody gets up to go to the bathroom and take a whiz. They know the song already. So I'm like, no, put it out. Get it out. You got everybody's attention. Because there was a lot of people hesitant going, I don't know, because, you know, you're so used to putting out something and obviously taking it on the road and performing. And now with COVID, people are like, biting their nails going, should we or should we? And I'm going, nah. Well, I'm a guy that just loves new music anyway. I mean, I played the hits all my life, and I found my niche of new music because that's what musicians do. And folks like yourself are going, thank you. I mean, I get 10 CDs a week in my mail from people just going, please take a listen and maybe play one if you would. And I think that's the hardest part of my job, is doing its diligence and listening to the whole CD, and tell my wife to mute Mike and Molly for a minute and listen to like Field of Grace or The River, and we look at each other going, oh my goodness, it should be a number 1, but today in radio it's a little bit different, the whole Spotify thing, and I encourage everybody to go out and, you know, buy the physical thing so Steve and everybody can sign it. You can't sign Spotify, but
right.
Folks can pre-order right now, Steve, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you can find it on our website, which is thehollywoodallstars.net. We're a net website. It's www.thehollywoodallstars.net. Deco Entertainment, our label, has everything available on merchbucket.com, MERCH bucket.com. And Pat, you know what? I mean, everything that you're saying is resonating with me, like, to my core, about the new music and about Spotify. And, you know, there's no shortage of talent out there. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you think of the amount of talent and people now writing music, producing music, and putting stuff out. And it's just really, really gratifying to be able to speak with someone like you, and especially a song like The River. You know, I knew when you said that to me that we were going to have a lovely conversation. I knew that we were simpatico when it came to that track. So that was all good.
I mean, everybody needs to hear that song, and I definitely going to throw that on our playlist for everybody needs to hear that song, and everybody could certainly relate to that song. A beautifully done and incredible ballad. Like I said, I got goosebumps, and I could just close my eyes and I know I'm walking out of a church and thinking of all our lost brothers and sisters that have been called to home. But it's a beautiful song, and I
well,
can't.
Thank you, Pat.
That's awesome.
Thank
You kind of answered one of the questions with this incredible world-class musicians. What's the set list like? But you kind of touched upon a little of this and a little of that, and keep everybody on their feet for Friday night at the Sacred Heart Community Theater.
Well, you know, Pat, it's an interesting question. I mean, obviously the 5 songs on the EP are going to be the focal point of the show. But what I'm trying to do with this show Friday night, I want to take people on a little bit of a historic journey of the band. How it began, starting with all our earliest likes in music. We're actually even going to start the show. We're going to start with an instrumental just to let the rhythm section warm up a little bit. But the first song we're actually going to be doing with the vocalist is a really cool arrangement of the song Woodstock. Which may sound unexpected, but I mean, that's really where a lot of all of us in the band, our first experiences with rock and roll and live music began, aside from the Ed Sullivan Show and the Beatles. But by 1969, everybody was in Woodstock, and when you think of the artists that performed there, and then it proceeds through a little bit of a journey, the songs that some of us played on as we were growing up, and it leads into the original material from the show, which will obviously, again, that'll be what we'll be focusing on.
Well, it sounds like a blast, and people are going to make sure you have your dancing shoes on for a fun time, an amazing band. I also did see, I think on the website, Steve, another show in October in Norwalk at the Wall Street Theater, which is a beautiful, small little venue well, and that's going to be a killer, and folks can also check that out. As Steve said, the HollywoodAllStars.net. I know they're on Facebook. I know they're on Instagram. And you can also check out Deco Entertainment. They got a great list of limited merch bundles left and right. But man, oh man, Steve, it's a lot of fun getting a chance to meet with you and chat with you over the Hollywood All-Stars. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I have.
Pat, I really did. It really has been a pleasure speaking with you. I mean, as I said, it really feels like we were on the same page, and it was a very easy conversation for me to have with you. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. And my door is always open. When you decide to put out another video or another track, make sure you let our friend Chip know to reach out to me. And if I could help you get into Daryl's house, by all means, get a hold of me and see what we can do. We've had we had Bernard Fowler. Speaking of the Rolling Stones, Bernard's the backup singer with the Stones for 30 years, and Bernard put together, it had to be maybe 10 people. No horn section, but 10 folks on that stage, and I was honored to introduce Bernard, a great, great guy, and see if we could squeeze you up there on the stage, but it would be all good. Unfortunately, I'm out of town this week. I leave tomorrow for a little vacation, but I will definitely, I got it already marked on my calendar for your show down in Norwalk in October, and I'll keep an eye for other shows I'm sure you're going to be working on as well, correct?
Absolutely, Pat, and thank you for the open door. You don't have to worry. I think you're going to be hearing from me again in the near future, so that'll be a definite for sure.
I love it. Well, it's all about new music, and here is new music at its best. Remember the Hollywood AllStars, and if you can get down to Fairfield, Connecticut, get your tickets today and bring on your dancing shoes. Thanks for listening, as always, to Pat Soundbites Unplugged Podcast. Perfect, Steve.
Pat, I can't thank you enough, really. It was a very pleasurable interview. I really appreciate it.
Well, like I said, I can't make it this Friday, but if anything that I can do to help you out, I would love to check you guys out and support you any way that I can.
Thank you for that, Pat. I appreciate it. And as I said, I'm sure we're going to keep in touch. Thank you.
All right, my buddy. Be safe and stay traveled and stay well, and we'll talk soon.
And you enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.